Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you joined us for our oil and gas conference. Our next presentation is from Desert Mountain Energy. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides, and you can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Don Mosher. He's the president and director of Desert Mountain Energy Corp, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol DMEHF and on the TSXV under the symbol DME. Welcome back, Don.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here. As John mentioned in an earlier conversation, this is kind of Desert Mountain Energy 2. Originally, we were really focused on helium exploration and exploitation in Arizona. We had drilled 8 wells there, and we ran into some regulatory problems that I'll touch on a little later. And then, fortunately for us, we were well financed, and an opportunity came up in New Mexico, and we jumped on it, bought a nat gas field. And now that opportunity has turned into something that involves a data center outside of Roswell, the Roswell Information Park. Our exploration in Dartmouth, Devon, which is mentioned down in the bottom there, is in partnership with a UK company. They're interested in exploring for helium and hydrogen in the UK, and they came to us looking for some expertise, basically as consultants. Forward-looking statements, naturally required in all these presentations. So Desert Mountain Energy Corp. In New Mexico, we're fortunate in our West Pecos Slope Abo gas field. We also have a helium credit in there. So when we bought that field, we'd actually built a processing plant and had it operating in Arizona. And then we had some problems with a drop in pressure. And the problems that we had with regulators really involved getting permits to do small stimulations on the wells. And we came to the conclusion, because Arizona is not an oil and gas state, they really have no understanding of it. They're great when it comes to mining, but oil and gas seems to put the fear of God into them. They're very worried about their aquifers, and we went out of our way when we were doing our drilling to protect the aquifers by casing and doing a triple redundancy on the cementing procedures, but they don't really understand what we're talking about. And realizing that, we had the opportunity to buy this field in New Mexico, so we jumped on it and moved our processing plant to New Mexico and started to move forward with nat gas and helium production there. We've got good access to capital markets. We've raised in excess of $60 million Canadian over the last 5 years. You'll see, based on the share chart, we had a much higher market cap going back to 2021, 22, 23 than what we're currently at right now. And as a result of what happened in Arizona, it's almost that we need to rebuild credibility with the marketplace would be the best way I could put it. But what we bought in New Mexico was 188 producing gas wells. We've got our own collection system. The Roswell Information Park, which was announced earlier this year, came to us, and we came to an agreement on selling them all the gas that we produce for the life of the field. Won't be anywhere near what they need. They're going to need something like 300 million cubic feet a day. But our field, we can maybe get it up to 7 or 8 million, 7 or 8 MCF a day, plus whatever we get for the helium credit coming out of there. The helium credit runs about 0.5%. So our focus really has been on bringing this field to optimum production. There's also quite a bit of room there for expansion. Our management team is run by Robert Rolfing. He came up with the concept of looking for helium in Arizona originally. He'd been on that quest for about 25 years. He's a brilliant geologist, engineer. We were 8 for 8 drilling helium wells in Arizona, a pretty much unheard of success rate. Our operations manager in New Mexico is Eric Witt. He comes to us from ConocoPhillips. Our board has been more or less intact for the last 5 years. Mike O'Shea, who's the chair of our audit, came on board a couple of years ago, and he brings years and years of auditing experience. As you can see, KPMG, he was in the Ontario Provincial Auditor's Office, and he held senior audit positions with Enbridge and Gulf Canada. So he's very familiar with our side of the business when it comes to oil and gas. Um, Janaea Rolfing is Robert's daughter, but she heads up the drilling in the Permian Basin. So she's very, very educated on the oil and gas business as well. Weldon Stout recently retired. He's a judge in Oklahoma. Again, a good oil and gas jurisdiction. You can see what happened to the stock when we ran into problems in Arizona. We had just raised 23 million Canadian at $1.95 a unit. And then we ran into a drop in the pressures, applied for stimulation permits, were denied, and went through this process of moving the production facility or the processing facility to New Mexico and getting it up and operating. And we did successfully get one tanker load out of the plant before we had to put it on care and maintenance while we're renegotiating new nat gas contracts with the midstream supplier. But now with what we've had happen to us with the Roswell Information Park, we're looking at going and hot tapping into a line that's about 100 feet from our processing facility, putting processed nat gas into that line, and on a contract basis, pushing it through to the Roswell Information Center. We are very dilutive sensitive. Both Robert and myself own a fair number of shares. Robert's 4.5 million shares. So we're very careful about our expenditures and how we do financings. There's our processing plant as it is now in New Mexico. It's it was designed to use a minimum amount of energy. We didn't have the advantage of actually having a nat gas field that it was sitting on in Arizona. It was sitting on a nitrogen field with high grade helium in it. And we were going to run it on solar. So energy consumption becomes a key element of it. We are looking at building a couple of new plants. They would be built specifically to location as this one was, but we've learned a lot about the plant, not only by initially designing and building it and getting it operating in Arizona, but then with the move, understanding changes we could make to it to again make it more efficient and reduce the cost of it. The Roswell Information Partnership that we have is a nat gas supply agreement with the park. We've also been tasked with engineering and designing an underground cavern. These data centers cannot go down for any amount of time. So the nat gas that's coming in through a pipeline needs to be backed up by underground storage. Unfortunately for us, we've got the only geological site available within 40 miles of this park that we can put that a cavern can be built on. Currently, it's with another party to reaffirm that all the engineering and geology is correct. The feedback we've got from them is it can probably even be bigger than 3 BCF. We're also looking at non-traditional water collaboration. Water's a problem everywhere for these facilities, and especially in an area as dry as New Mexico. And what we're looking at is non-traditional, meaning taking the water coming out of oil and gas wells and using it in a closed loop system by cleaning it up, um, and not worrying about going and competing with the municipality or anybody else on underground water. The water production coming out of wells is a problem. They need to find injection wells to put the water down. And if we can acquire the water off them and clean it up, and it would end up being cleaned up to a level that's cleaner than what the actual drinking water would be. And the salt coming out of these brines, we'd sell back to the state highway. They could use it in the winter for salt in the roads. We're also taking a look and working with them on CO2 sequestration systems. They want this. Data center being as clean as possible when it comes to emissions. It's been one of the big things. Right now, they're looking at a system that would cost close to $1 billion on top of what the data center itself is going to cost. And that is viewed as being critical by the people planning on using this data center. The facility itself, fortunately for us, when we designed and built it, it was put into storage containers, 40-foot storage containers. So when we did pick it up and move it, it really was a matter of identifying all the lines, numbering them, and moving it kind of like a Lego set. You close up the storage containers, put them on trucks, move it to New Mexico, all the lines, pull them in, cut them, minimize the amount of welding that was going to be needed to put them back together, and then we got it up and running. The field, as you can see, is located just outside to the north of Roswell. The information center is a couple of miles from where this field is. It sits right on a highway. It's got fiber optics running through there. The airport in Roswell is a military airport. I think they can land anything up to a B-52 in that airport. So it's got all the critical elements necessary for one of these data centers. And the price of land obviously came into the picture, and you can buy land relatively inexpensively outside of Roswell. This is what we purchased. It was 188 wells. You can see the 50 miles of collection system. And we are taking a look at potentially an acquisition of the Pecos slope field that sits beside us. It's considerably larger than what we have. It's owned by the company that we bought the West Pecos field off of. And we're in negotiations on that right now. We'll see how that moves forward. But you can see the El Paso main line, which is a 36-inch line running right through here, which is necessary to bring the gas in to operate this large data center. I believe it's anticipated it's going to be 4 gigawatts using about 300 million cubic feet of gas a day. And then, of course, we'd have the cavern backing up the El Paso line on our property in case there is any kind of maintenance issues or anything else with the line. The McCauley field in Arizona, this is what it looked like when we had it up and running. Unfortunately, knowing that it would take a couple of years to work our way through the regulations in Arizona and really go through the education process of why we were so careful and why we would not threaten the aquifers in the area, continues to move along at a snail's pace. And that's fine with us. We've put applications in where we're not forced into plugging wells. We can maintain all our leases, maintain all these wells while we move through this process. And our focus now is entirely New Mexico. They plan to break ground on the data center this month. So it should get very exciting. We should have a number of other announcements coming out as this thing develops and moves forward. These were our leases, or are our leases, I should say, in Arizona. We successfully drilled wells on Meteor Crater, 4 wells on the McCauley field. We had a couple wells on the Rolfing field, and we drilled 1 well up in Winslow North. What attracted Robert there initially, you can see this big yellow blob off to the right side. That's an old field called the Pintadome, and that was the highest grade helium wells ever discovered and produced globally, as to the best of my knowledge. It was running up to 12% helium back in the 60s into the mid 70s. It was used to supply the Apollo program for their launches. Our wells came in at anywhere from 1.5% to a high of about 8%, which we viewed as very economic. And we would really love to get back in and continue to exploit these fields and get into production there. Currently, we've got a hydrogen separation unit in Arizona. We've got the solar farm, which we put into the field. We've got the batteries. All we really need is the permits and to build a new plant that would be absolutely custom built for the McCauley field. And we could be back into operation in Arizona fairly quickly. So, kind of a summary on where we're at. We own 77,000 acres in New Mexico. We're looking to potentially acquire more gas fields there. 188 producing wells with the collection system. We're looking at being fully integrated, meaning we take our gas right from the well through our processing center and sell it directly to end users. We plan to go back into Arizona and continue to do our work there when we do get our permits. In the meantime, we're completely focused on supplying and managing the natural gas into the Roswell Information Center. All the gas coming into that center will be behind our meters, so we'll get a small management fee on managing that gas. We'll also be managing, obviously, the backup storage in the cavern, and we'll be working with them on the sequestration. I'm having a real problem with that word. And sourcing more gas for them. We've had a really good relationship with the Roswell Information Park. The state of New Mexico is very eager to see this business come in there, and we've had great cooperation with the federal agencies. We do have a couple of grant applications in that would definitely speed up all our work in these jurisdictions, and we look forward to seeing that money come into us. I think the non-traditional water reuse, so if we're successful with it, it'll be something that other data centers can take a look at if they're in nat gas areas. And, really it has AI data centers, and the amount of energy consumption that they're going to be really has become a topic. We look forward to seeing much better nat gas prices in the future than what we've seen recently. Nat gas seems to be the short-term answer. Maybe 10 years out, we'll start to see some of these small nuclear units come in to play. But in the meantime, nat gas is absolutely the cleanest source, an abundant energy source, an energy source that can be cleaned up. And I really think there needs to be a strong push towards more nat gas production in North America to supply the energy requirements that are going to be coming at us very, very quickly with the building of these data centers. Other than that, really, the uses of helium were something we used to touch on. I don't think a lot of people realize how critical helium is to our modern society. It's used as a coolant in MRIs. It's used in space launch. It's used in liquid hard drives for electric vehicles, and all the traditional uses out there that people were familiar with, welding, obviously balloons, that type of stuff, but it's a very finite resource. It's very difficult to find because it's the second smallest atom in the periodic table. It's very hard to contain. Um, and when it's created in the earth, if it's not captured within a very dense structure, it rises to an anticlimb and it escapes through any kind of fracture into the back into space. So the price of helium over the last few years has escalated from $50 an MCF up to like $600 an MCF now, depending on grade. And there's been a series of shortages, as you can see by this timeline, that have been created either through geopolitical problems like Russia, they're a large supplier of it, or the actual shutting down of the US reserve they had. Originally, the US viewed helium as going to be a critical element in the military for balloons. And then the obviously dirigibles were replaced by jets, so it wasn't as critical. But about 15, 20 years ago, once MRIs started to be coming in, and MRIs are the largest user of helium in the world, more and more applications have come on board. And it's irreplaceable. Some of the things that it can do, no other element out there can do. It's non-reactive, like with hydrogen, water, hydrogen sulfide, all those. Hydrogen is very reactive. You don't see helium marrying any other element. Helium stays in a pure state, very stable, non-explosive. Um, it's got the lowest boiling point of any element out there, and that's why it's so ideal for cooling things like MRIs when the magnets start to spin. Uh, if you have any more information, send me questions. I'll respond to everything on that you send me into the text. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to us if you've got any questions or anything else. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks to the OTC for this opportunity.